All right, I want to do a quick rundown of the Maxxecu system since a lot of people aren't familiar with it. So when you open it up, here's the basic screen, which is really nice and clean, easy on the eyes. Colors look good. Everything is laid out nice. So from the main screen, you can see these are all your settings that are basically organized in folders. That's where you can open up a tune. That's where you can save a tune. This is where you can even compare your main tune with one of your older tunes to see what may be different or not. This button here will allow you to look at a data log. Down here you have a logger here. This is a live logging screen here, so you can go in here and you can set different things. Like you can set whatever channels you want, which this thing has tons of capabilities on that. Change all your basic stuff. You could even add a plot area where you can have like two split screens there with different stuff on it. And over here is your real-time sensors, so you can pretty much look at anything on the ECU real time while it's running or not running. And back up here to your basic folders, very clean how they have this set up. So you can basically go to whatever you're wanting to mess with. So let's say you have your car already tuned and stuff and everything is done. From that point, if you're just going in there for some minor tuning, you just go in here to your tuning. You have your fuel table, your lambda, your O2 table, and your ignition table. And these extra tables here are just different custom things you can add that you can make it modify your either your fuel or your ignition tables. Tons of capabilities. There's so much trick stuff you can do there. I mean, like this extra ignition table, you could turn one of these into a wheelie control. So if you had a wheelie sensor, you could set it up over here and set it at whatever, how many inches you could have it pull timing out. Like you could, so you want to pull 30 degrees out or something. So many capabilities there. Go up here to your main configuration. This is where you set your engine stuff. Let me see, I'm gonna load one of my tunes. So this is where you can set your engine size, your firing order, all of that. Your logging, this is where you can set up your logger, which is totally amazing. So you have so many, like I'm logging 102 channels at 1,000 hertz. And it says logging starts by switch input or internal output. So I actually have an internal output programmed with some parameters where once it hits that, it automatically starts recording. And I think I got it right now set on something basic like I think 70% throttle. My data log will start recording, but you can set it for all kinds of stuff. You can set it for 80% throttle and 2 pounds of boost. It's really crazy all the stuff you can do. And when you're downloading your logs, you're hooked up to the car, you just hit this download button and it would bring up a screen and you just click your logs that you just recently did, hit download, and I mean it's just like super fast. You can select all of your channels, so when you open this up, it opens up basically all the stuff that you're capable of selecting to log. So it's like hundreds and hundreds of different things that you can log on here. This thing has Bluetooth capability. So if you can basically hook up any type of Android device and use it for a screen. I mean, even your cell phone. And that device you can even set up on the device because they have a software for that, or an app that you can download on your phone or any Android device. So you can even make switches on your screen and have Bluetooth switches. So right here you can see you can have up to 8 Bluetooth switches that you can have control anything in the ECU and any of the outputs of the ECU. Really nice. Your limits, you got your rev limit, your boost cut, just basically things that would limit the engine. Advanced warning outputs, that's where you can set like a low oil pressure shut off or something. Something I should have done a while back whenever I lost the oil pump on my car. You got your basic folder for all of your fuel related stuff, so where you can tell it your injectors, if you have staged injection, or like 2 sets of injectors, you can tell it your fuel you're on, the power you need, the peak and hold drivers. I mean, just all the nice stuff to set up your injectors. So I've got mine set up for 2 sets of injectors, so it's staged. So right here you see staged enable, and you see over here, well, first of all, I have the first set of injectors set here, and then over here you have staged injection, where you can set information on your secondary set of injectors. And so simple. I mean, it's kind of auto transition here, so there's nothing to even tune or mess with on the second injectors once you get this setting here right. So when I'm making a pass, as soon as my primary set of injectors get to around 90% duty cycle, it automatically starts auto transitioning the secondary set in. So no super crazy programming has to be done for that. And you can also set it for primary to secondary changeover. So that would be if you have a dual fuel system, you can have it where it's on gas or E85, and as soon as it starts making boost, it will transition straight over to like maybe a methanol set of injectors. So that's really cool for the drag and drive type cars. Alright, you got your other basic stuff like your startup, fuel priming, acceleration enrichment, your lambda control. So all of your normal fuel stuff there. Ignition, you have your ignition settings where you can set like your coil on plug or distributor or however you have that set up. You got some ignition idle control stuff, so if you have IAC or if you're just trying to make it control idle a little better by working the ignition, it has that. You have idle control settings. You can set your target RPM and stuff like that if you have your idle air control motor on there. Your motorsports, that's where you would go for race related stuff. Anti-lag, if you got something related to that, which I do not. Your launch control, that's on the 2-step. So there's my launch control here. So you've got a lot of parameters and safety stuff you can put in. You can see here I've got mine set on 3700. But you can actually have it set, let's say if I wanted to do 4200 here. So as soon as I stab it, it'll go to a 4200 chip, and after it builds 2.5 pounds of boost, it'll blend down to 3700. So you see a lot of people using that feature. And while you're on the 2-step, you can have it pulling out retard as it's building. So as you see here, I have mine steady pulling out time, and then by 8 pounds of boost, I'm pulling 20 degrees timing, and that kind of helps it build a little bit quicker when you do that. Rolling launch, I don't use that, but Roll Racers, that's pretty sweet. They have that set up where if you're just driving down the road, let's say you're in 3rd gear at 3,000 RPM and you hit this button, it will lock it at that RPM, so you can roll on into the throttle and you're on that 2-step locked in at that RPM until you release the button. So it's almost like a rolling 2-step. You got a shift cut here. I don't use that. Power management. This is pretty nice. This is where you would do your some of your traction control related stuff. Like right here is your time after launch power limit. If you had this engaged, this is basically like a launch retard. But you can set parameters to do different things, but it's set up mainly as a launch retard. So you can have it where when you let off the button at a certain time, you can pull time in and then let it ramp back in. So right here at basically 0.2 seconds, it would pull out 20 degrees of time and hold it to 1 second, and then from 1 to 1.5, it would ramp it back down. So it's kind of like your old school launch retard. And speed-based power management, this is kind of a traction control type deal that people use on other setups. This is basically where you would set a speed curve or an RPM, or a RPM curve. Actually, it'd be a drive shaft RPM curve. So you'd either set a mile per hour based or an RPM based curve. So if you had some good runs, you could make a copy of your good runs on here. And there's a way to go from your data log and copy your data log information straight to this without even having to figure it out. So that's pretty nice. But yeah, this would give you the RPM graph, and that way if you made a pass and it tried to go above this line, it would start pulling power. And you could either set it to pull power by having ignition cut or retard. I've generally been using retard on mine. Speed gear setting. This is just where you set up your speed sensors, front wheel, rear wheel, drive shaft, stuff like that. And this is also where the traction control they have built in is set up at. And this traction control here is a front to rear wheel biased traction control. So once you get both your sensors in harmony, then you can set this up where if you get any wheel slip, like here's my target wheel slip. So going down the road, if it hits more wheel slip than this, that's when the traction control kicks in and starts trying to control it. CAN bus, you got all kinds of fancy CAN based stuff that you can do. They even have the CAN keyboards or keypads that you can put on here, which I run those in my car. It's really nice, so you can have a nice CAN keypad to control things inside here. Advanced, that's basically exactly what it means. These are just some advanced cool things that you could figure some neat stuff that if you wanted to do on your car, which I use some of this stuff. These internal outputs, like this internal output here, that's what I use to start my log. So start log, I got it based on throttle position of 70%. I even got to turn off delays, so if I just let off the throttle, it won't shut the recording off. It'll actually stay recording for what I have set on 10 seconds. And this is where it's actually controlling something. So it's controlling an internal input of logging run. So that's how I start my log. Inputs, this is all of your nice inputs that you have. You can set up your ignition inputs, your cam sync, your crankshaft sensor, your other basic sensors like TPS. This is where you would set your TPS at, and your coolant and temperature sensors and stuff. The Max even has built-in EGT stuff. You don't even have to go and buy a $1,000 extra box like you do for most other systems. It's built into most all of their systems. So it comes with a harness that already has the plugs. So all you have to do is supply your thermocouplers and just plug them babies in and set these up, and you've got a full EGT system on there, all built in. That's as far as I know. I don't know any other system out there that has that. Got your digital input. So you see here I got my two-step, my drive shaft, my front wheel speed. Analog inputs, you got quite a bit of those. So I've got all of my different analog inputs here. And they're really nice settings. You can set them up really nice. It's got all kinds of cool stuff for that. If you have the bigger unit, it's got built-in G meters, so you have your X, Y, and Z G sensors built into it. Outputs is what really shines for me, because I can do a lot of stuff with outputs. I mean, and they have a lot of outputs. You set your ignition, your injector outputs, all the fancy stuff that you want to do. So you can see here, like on my shift, I have my shift set up where if it's greater than 7,200, and you see it has A and B, so it has to be both of these. So I also have it set up where the timer has to be over 2 seconds into the run. So if it strikes the tire, it doesn't shift. But these are all the different ways that you can set up the outputs. I mean, it's really crazy, all the fancy stuff you can do on outputs. Like here, I got my chute set up where if the time is greater than 4 seconds, but less than 7 seconds, and my speed is above 145 miles an hour, it'll automatically throw my parachute. So that's pretty nice there. This output here is it's my primer, my fuel primer. I got an electric fuel pump on my car, so basically I've got it set up to where the keypad 1 button of my CAN keypad will just turn on this output. So I can turn on my prime fuel pump just by hitting the keypad button. Let's see, got some really nice diagnostics in here. It'll tell you if you got any issues. You can test the injectors or the ignition. So all you do is go up here and you just you can do selected outputs, or you can have it do in firing order. So if I was going through, I would put on selected outputs, your frequency, your injector pulse width, your ignition dwell time, and you can go in here and just select each individual one that you want. You'd hit start test. You can test that one, test that one, test that one. And that's for your injectors, and you can go down here and test your coils. Make sure all your coils are clicking. Very nice to make sure, especially whenever you first get your car up and running, make sure everything is actually working. Let's see, you can temporarily shut off cylinders if you're doing some testing. Injector resistance, this is pretty nice. You just hit that measure button and it will measure the resistance of all of your injectors. So that will let you know straight up if you have an injector plug off or a bad injector or something. That's really helpful. Trigger logger, this helps you diagnose any crank cam sensor issues. Trigger oscilloscope, which you can't see it right now, but it looks like an actual oscilloscope that people that work with electronics use. So that helps you with your trigger issues too. If you have any weird problems with your tune, it'll actually tell you right here, hey, you got a problem with this. And let's see, that's pretty much it on just the basics of this, but I'll just show you just a data log. Show you. Let's see, we'll just open up something random here. All right, this is my 456 pass I made with. Going to have the LS in it. But when you do it, it gives you an option here of actually pulling the tune out of that log. So whenever you save a log, it saves the tune in the log also. So either you can say no and not overwrite the tune that's on your screen right now, or you can hit yes and it'll pull that tune in there. So I'm going to hit yes, and whenever I hit yes, it will pull that tune completely into the system. So here's the data logger, all the stuff that you can. So as you're doing it, it shows down here all of your live stuff. Right here you can put your information from the run, like 60 foot, all your stats from your ET slip, and you can put some notes in here to let you know what you had it set on. So this was 456 and 157. But the data logger is really nice. There's a lot of stuff. And you know how I told you that you could transfer stuff into the power management area? You would do that right here. So let's just say there's my drive shaft, or my rear wheel speed. So if I went right here, right click, selection, begin selection, go all the way over here, right click, end selection. I could right click again and go to the same selection, and it says import as baseline for power management. So if I did that, that would load that drive shaft speed curve, or that mile per hour curve, into the power management. So you don't have to go through there and manually do it. It'll actually load that for you. Also, this auto tune, what this would do is if you had correction from a run, like if it was correcting 10% fuel or something, and you hit this button across the selected area, it would go in there and actually modify your VE table to try to get your tune a little closer. So that's pretty nice too. Clear. And you can really set up parameters on all of your data log, like your channel setups. You can go in here and you can set the range, like RPM range 0 to 9,000. You can just do this on everything. So a lot of cool stuff you can do here. You can even program different folders for different things that you want to see on your data log. But anyway, that was just a quick rundown. I just wanted to run down just kind of the basics of the system without getting too complex with it. But so much stuff you can do with this system, it's unreal.